This program is brought to you by Dielectric LLC, Energy in Motion.
Carlos Nelson with What's Up Kansas City and Cascade Media Group. And today we've got another one of our city councilmen in, Mr. Dan Flowers. And he is on, what are you on the airport? What position do you have?
I'm not on the airport committee. There's no longer an airport committee.
When did that take place?
Well, last term I was vice chair of the airport committee.
Yeah, that's all right. That's what was on your. All right. How do you see the airport going, Dan?
Well, from my perspective, I think it's going very, very well. A number of people I think have complaints about it, but overall, it's on time. It's on budget. It seems to be on track to fulfilling its community obligations, and I think it's doing very, very well in those areas, generally speaking.
See, the other council people that I talked to, they was really dissatisfied with how things were going.
Well, I can't speak for them.
I know,
think we all sure have a different perspective on it. I try to look at it globally, and having been on the airport committee for 4 years, I see what they were attempting to achieve. I also know realistically that some things were probably, well, I've been very pleasantly surprised that they have been able to achieve as much as they have. The airport project is a massive project, and you don't really realize it until you go out there. It takes a lot of people. And I think some of the dissatisfaction is because there hasn't been as much local hiring as some folks would like. All in all, however, I think that there's been probably a lot more local hiring on the airport than there has on just about virtually every other project that you can look at in Kansas City that is of any size.
I'm concerned with the minority hiring. I'm gonna give you a little background on myself because I don't think you know too much about me.
I don't.
All right. I used to own the second largest black construction company in Kansas City. And when I went out of business, I had put the bid bond up, and I had won the contract to put the elevator in KCI, the tower.
Mm-hmm.
This is like in the early 90s.
This has been a few years ago.
All right. I was a founding board member of the Full Employment Council, was on that for about 5 to 7 years. Chairman.
Excellent organization,
committees. Yes. Yeah, bought Clyde McQueen here from Texas. All right. So I say that all the time, not to pat myself on the back or anything, to let you know I know which way is up in this town.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And there are other things that I've been involved in. The Citizens Association, my godfather called the capo. At one time I was vice president. That's when the Citizens Association was really popping and had the All right. So what I was saying about the airport, because we are a basically African-American network, we're concerned with what's happening in our community because our community is the lowest on the totem pole. And it was my understanding that how these bids have been going out, there hasn't been a significant amount of minority participation as it relates to dollar-wise. And that I think has to be looked at from my perspective as a businessman. But you've been involved, and as I tell my audience a lot, that a lot of things on the surface that you might think is one way, when you dig deeper, it's a different way, and you have more information than I do, so I could respect your opinion on that. My next thing is, and that should have been my first thing, but when you mentioned something about airport, that got me. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself. And hey, Dan, don't play with me. I want you to go back to when you was little and talk about what your ambition was, the era you came up in, who were some of your mentors? Because that's, you know how important that is.
Yes.
And give them their propers by mentioning who they were and what your platform is for your district in Kansas City.
Sure.
I know that's a lot, but
that's a lot. It'll take me a while. And I'm 66 years old, so going back that far in my memory is probably.
I got you by 3.
Pardon me?
I got you by 3. I just turned 69, July 29th.
You give me hope. I grew up in Salina, Kansas. My dad was a union electrician. My mom was a housewife, basically. My mom became disabled when I was about 7 because of severe mental illness. My dad passed when I was 14. So I was largely raised by my mother, certainly, but also by my maternal grandmother who lived with us. I went to Salina, Kansas public schools. I went to K-State undergrad. I started my college career in chemical engineering. Calculus 3 got me and washed me out. And I went into the business curriculum. Back in those days, for basically a poor kid growing up in central Kansas, I had a big advantage that people don't have these days, and that is Social Security continued through college. And so that kept me and my family going through those years. When I got out of college, I got into law school. I went to Georgetown Law School. And after graduating from law school, I moved back here. I think of my mentors, certainly my dad was probably a very, very great influence in my life because he always tried to instill in me, as he did himself, that if just do the right thing, be right by people, be honest, and be loyal to your family. He was certainly loyal to mine and to my mom up until the day he passed. And so he was probably, I think of him a lot these days, perhaps more than I have in the past, because there are all kinds of influences floating around with elected officials, but I always strive to do what I perceive to be the right thing by everybody. I know the necessity of opportunity. I certainly was given a lot of opportunity along the way that I think I took advantage of for the most part. There was always an expectation, and neither of my parents went to college. There was always an expectation that I was going to college. In fact, it was a given. And so I think that was a big leg up for me, that there was never any thought that I would do anything but that. And that's exactly what I did. So after I got out of law school, I moved back to Kansas City to be closer to family. I think about that every February when it is cold and blizzardy here in Kansas City. I think that, when I got out of law school, I could have gone anywhere in the United States. I could have gone to Florida, southern Texas, Puerto Rico,
I was wondering,
Arizona.
cutting you off, I was wondering how, after you went to the big city, how you came on back.
Well, my family was here, and the point I was getting to is I'm still here. They've all gone. So I wonder who the smarter one was in that deal. But I fell in love with this area. I really did not like the East Coast.
What didn't you like about the East Coast, Dan? Because I'm from New York. And
are you?
Yes, and back when you was in law school, I came here in 78. When was you in law school?
I graduated in 79.
All right. I had just moved here from Laurel, Maryland.
Okay.
I was talking to some of my partners last night. They told me I wouldn't even recognize Laurel. I said I probably wouldn't recognize DC because I haven't been there really since the early 80s.
Sure. I go there every year now for National League of Cities. I'm hoping to go in March. We go every year for a Congressional City Summit. or conference, and it certainly changed a lot in those years.
Tell me this. So what made you get into politics?
It's kind of something I'd always done. When I was in college, I was active in a local political organization. I got to know a lot of people there. I found it very fulfilling and rewarding. I found out that it was not what people think it is. It's a lot of very hard work, and you have to understand issues. You have to understand people, and I like that. Now, when I was starting my law practice and building a family, I was out of it for a while. But
cut you off again. Your law practice. What kind of law do you practice?
I practice general civil practice. I don't do any criminal practice. I've spent a number of years in big firms, and now I'm in a very small firm. I have one law partner, and we practice up here up north, and it's been generally very, very rewarding.
So I want to
personally, not necessarily financially. I will say that.
See, I thought you had all the cake, man.
No, I do not.
All right, but you got a slice, don't you?
I got a little bit. All
right. Hey, Dan. Now let's talk about up north a little bit. Tell me what you see for up north. That's one of the fastest growing areas in Kansas City. What's your platform? How you see, and what do you see the North needs?
The Northland in general, and my district in particular, I think is an area of opportunity for immense growth. And with immense growth up here comes increased economic vitality for the entire city. I don't do this just for me or for my district. I do it because I think it is something that is crucial to the city. We have a lot of open space, and that means a lot of places to develop and to grow and to build businesses and to attract new businesses in a fairly economical way in comparison to other parts of the city. What do we need up here? It's very simple. We need infrastructure. We need roads to get to those places. And we have discovered over the past 20 or so years that if you build those roads and build that out, that infrastructure out, then prosperity comes along with it. It gives an opportunity.
Field of dreams. If you build it, they'll come. And you know what? I'm in agreement with you, because when I came here to Kansas City, landed at KCI in '78, you know what it looked like.
Oh, yeah.
The Northland. And I think Frank Morgan, or I forgot what, he had owned all that property out in that area. And
yes.
It had, man, that Northland just shot up overnight, it seemed. It's 20 years, but to me, it was like overnight. And you're right. The rest of Kansas City doesn't have that much room, that much space.
Yes. You say it shot up overnight. From my perspective, having lived up here, it seems incredibly slow. It's taken a while to get off. I know when the Executive Hills people started to move up here, gosh, this has been 30 years ago or more, maybe. They thought it would go a lot quicker than it did, and it certainly had its hiccups and its fits and starts back then. And I think we're just starting to realize some of the opportunities that Larry Bridges and Frank Morgan and a few others saw up here years and years ago. But it's been a very slow process from my perspective.
Tell me this. There's been an influx of minorities. A lot of Hispanics have moved north of the river, per se. I want to, if it's not too touchy, because I think these conversations have to have this race conversation, this Black Lives Matter, this unequal playing field. How do you feel about all of that?
I think with increased prosperity, those opportunities come. Yeah, I'm very much.
Let me cut you off again.
Oh, okay.
They come. There's no doubt that they come. But do they? From my perspective, like I said, we're. I talk black and white. Might as well say from a black perspective, that comes, but we don't share in that prosperity. And I'm talking firsthand experience from construction, and I'm telling you, I renovated courthouse downtown, courthouse in Independence, Lake Jacomo Sheriff Station. I did 6 plexes. I did a whole lot of work for Parks and Rec right there at Westport and Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the little park that's there, and right there, across from the corner restaurant. It's a little island right there. I put that in for Parks and Rec back in the early 80s. And I'm saying, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to these economics. That stadium, when they did those stadiums, that should have produced at least 10 Black millionaires, and it didn't, because they didn't get the work. And so that's the issue, I guess. Part of the issue with Black Lives Matter, built the country, and we're still at the bottom of the totem pole. And you as a council person, along with your other council people, what I'm trying to do is get this conversation started where we're talking to each other, and you talking to your constituents, and our council people talking to their constituents, because we're not going to get to the bottom of the economic, the racial, anything, unless we're talking and not talking at one another, talking to one another and respecting one another's positions. What's your position?
I agree with you. I think we have to talk to each other, we have to understand each other, and we have to have more conversations like you and I are having now. One thing that years ago I learned from a guy, his name was, his last name was Chastain. He was a professor at, I think William Jewell College, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. It's been a lot of years ago. But he said something that's been profound to me for a long, long time. And that is, it's very hard to dislike somebody that you have met and spoken with one-on-one. And it's very hard to deny that person opportunity when you know that person. So I think that's extremely important that we have these kinds of conversations. What my point was that, first of all, the Northland is increasing, I think, exponentially in its diversity. Nobody realizes this, but the North Kansas City School District has 20,000 students, and I think is the second or third most diverse school district in the state of Missouri. The ones that are more diverse are much, much, much smaller. And that's just a peculiarity of their geography. But it is an area that is continuing to grow in its diversity. I live in the Park Hill School District. And in the next 10 years, white people will be a minority in that school district. Why? Because of increased opportunity up here. People of color moving up here more and more.
Well, they like it up in Parkville. I don't know whether you know I have a sports network. I have the largest high school sports network.
No, I did not know that.
Oh, Cascade Sports. You get a minute, go check it out.
Okay.
.tv. And Park Hill, I have been coming up there covering their basketball and football for the last 8 years. And I started my company at Lincoln Prep, and a lot of Lincoln, a couple of them went up to Park Hill after they got out of Lincoln, and I was up there covering their sports. Man, things have really grown up there, businesses and everything. But I didn't know it was as diverse as what you're saying. That's a good thing.
Oh, it's an outstanding thing. By the way, up until this year, my daughter was a vocal music teacher at Lincoln Prep.
All right. Hey, Dan, I started my company at Lincoln Prep about 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
Okay.
And now we're the only Black-owned digital media company in the Midwest. We have What's Up Kansas City, which we produce 36 shows. That's what you'll be on. We have the Kansas City Business Association. We got about 60, 70 businesses in that. We have What's Up Worldwide, where we're in 78 cities and 10 different countries. But you don't know nothing about that. And most people don't know anything about that. Spreading the news is really hard here in Kansas City, unless you have a lot of money and a lot of influence.
Sure, it's hard unless you have a lot of money and a lot of influence. I don't care what color you are, you're just going to have a hard time spreading the word. But yeah, I understand. The reason I probably don't know that is that for a rabid K-State fan, I don't follow sports. Well, the Chiefs a little bit. So you got to follow them, and the Royals follow them. And
well, see, I don't follow. I'm a diehard now. The older I get, and the more I really understand the world and understand people. There's no way. This is me. There's no way Black people in America should be buying Chiefs, any NFL, nothing. When they know that the NFL, for the most part, do not want to see them, do not care about them, and the NFL is about 75%. I'm saying, just like you being a lawyer, sometimes I don't think we as, and like I told you, we're a Black network, we as a people are using our economic power to its fullest effect. And that's the only thing America really respects is economics. And I talk about it a lot of times. When they had that saturated fat in McDonald's fries, you know, when they were frying, and the moms got all upset and said, we're not gonna buy from McDonald's because you know how everything is going healthier and healthier with the foods. Then they say, oh no, we can't have that. We got to change how we're doing things. And what I'm looking for with these type conversations, not just with my white colleagues, talking to my Black colleagues and politicians and saying, how come y'all can't come down and sit together and work some things out that's going to be good for the Black community, going to be good for the Northland, and that's going to make it good for our overall Kansas City. I always tell the politicians, how can you let the Black community wither on the vine and think Kansas City is going to be a healthy city?
well, you can't. You can't let anybody wither on the vine. You know, we have to have increased opportunity for everybody, and that's part of what our MBE, WBE goals are about, is to give particularly smaller startups the ability to increase their economic prosperity. And we give those.
Well, see, on that, I'm at loggerheads with that. I don't even believe in that MBE, WMBE stuff. After looking at it, and it's just like getting qualified. I know I'm qualified. Do you know I spent almost 6 months trying to qualify for MBE, what have you? I told my people, nix all of that. We 100% Black owned. White people don't have to say, oh, I'm white. And all of that, to me, all of those type things keep you from getting work. It's like when I was in construction, it would say, not necessarily the lowest bid, but the best bid. So yes. Why even have a bid? Because I win the bid, and then you say that's not the best bid. And you're a lawyer, you know, I always tell people lawyers can make a wrong a right a wrong, and accountants, they can juggle the figures and make massage things. That's what I learned coming up in business, and I learned all of that in Kansas City. And so what my yardstick is looking at my community, seeing how many 750 credit scores, because that, if you get a neighborhood with most of the people in there with a 750 credit score, that neighborhood is going to be healthy.
Yep.
All right, and that's not the case in my community, and I think my community is really, really on the deathbed to a degree in America, and I'm looking for politicians like yourself that, and I really respect what you were talking about, being true and ethics, because I think all of that's lost now. I don't think people are ethical as they claim to be. Their morality, and I'm calling for everybody to look in the mirror and check themselves.
I understand that. Yeah, and you're bringing a different perspective to me as well. that maybe there's other things we need to look at. And I would probably count on you to help me understand what those things are. How do we get those credit scores up to make an area or a community healthier? What kinds of things do we need to do there? Maybe MBE, WBE goals are not the way to do it. It's the only thing we've thought of so far, I suppose. But there are probably better ways to do it.
I like more like, and I never got in that program because I went out and got mine. 8A.
A what?
8A.
I'm not familiar with that term.
All right. 8A is a program with contractors. All right. So they might be doing research hospital, and they'll give it to a minority contract. They award it to you. You're in the program for like 5 years or so, until you really get healthy financially and everything, and then you're out the program. But they give you the work. As I said, I was in construction. People think that Jay Dunn just got there. Jay Dunn was a master at negotiating contracts. Jay Dunn didn't bid a lot of contracts. He negotiated the contracts. You negotiate, you gonna win.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
And so that type of stuff hasn't been afforded to Black people in general. And what I'm doing now, because the art of conversation is lost in America, I'm trying to have more conversations with our elected officials and people in the halls of power.
I appreciate that.
Tell me this: how do you see the new council and building relationships with our council people? How do you see them? And I know you got to be political, walk the chalk line on that. Do you see that you can work with them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a great deal of respect for the new people we have that have come on board. I think each of us kind of has our own way of viewing things, but we're certainly conversant with each other. We talk to each other. We socialize with each other. We try to come into a situation and say, okay, what's each of our perspectives on this? And how do we bring it all together in the middle somewhere where we can get something that works? And I've been very, very appreciative of that kind of partnership. I've talked to a number, I won't mention anybody by name, but a couple of them are particularly, I've gotten to be very good friends with, that we can sit down and we visit, hey, look, I need this. They say, well, I need that. Okay, well then how do we both get what we need? And you'd be surprised if you talk it out and you put the facts out all on the table, you can come up with a pretty cohesive decision.
Is there anything, any projects that are dear to your heart?
Oh, geez, yeah, there are a number of them.
Run them down to our audience.
Okay, first of all, one thing that some of us have been working very, very diligently on, and it's actually been going on for about the past, 7 years, and you're frozen on my screen. I hope you can see me okay.
Yeah, no, I'm frozen.
Yeah, you froze there for a second. It was a electronic feed problem. But we're trying to build a multi-sports complex in the Northland. Why are we doing it? Well, first of all, it will kickstart some economic development up here. It will turn about 400 or 500 acres of land that right now is producing zero for tax dollars and put on the tax roll. It will provide opportunity for kids throughout the city to come and play primarily soccer, but lacrosse and a number of other sports.
Is that coming through Parks and Rec or what?
Yeah, the only thing left to do is to approve a contract that has been through the negotiation process. and then we'll be good to go.
How you think Terry Renard is running that ship?
Say again.
How do you think Terry Renard is running that ship, Parks and Rec ship?
She's running it very, very carefully.
I like her.
I do too. You know, it's interesting. She is one who, when you go to her and say, "Hey, look, I think we can do this," and some other department's saying we can't, she'll say, "Oh yeah, you can do it this way." You know,
that's what I like. Oh, Dan. All right, so I'm not the only one. It's not because I'm black. She's helping me at different times. I met Terry when she was like the deputy. This is like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And I said, Terry, the Parks and Rec, they got a little mafia over there. And we digital media, and we were doing a lot of the night hoops, covering this and that. And I was like, they don't want to give us a contract, this and that. You know, that woman told her communications and another gentleman that was over everything, you go meet with Mr. Nelson and you talk to him and see how things blah, blah, blah. And I never forgot that. A lot of officials, they just go with whatever the staff is saying, they just stay in tune with that. But I really like what she's doing with Parks and Rec, the direction she's going, and hopefully that they can do something in the Northland.
Sure, and we're trying to do that. Yeah, she grew up, if you will, under Mark McHenry.
Right.
And if you ever worked with Mark was much the same way. He was, I'll be honest with you, perhaps more visionary in the long run than Terry is, but she'll grow into that role. But he knew how to get stuff done. And she is kind of the same ilk.
Well,
so I've been very happy.
Mark McHenry, his tenure changed how Parks and Rec work. My godfather, Carl DiCapo, was on Parks and Rec board at the time. Him and I think Mr. Gates bought him here, and I think he did an excellent job under the circumstances, the political situation here in Kansas City.
Sure. And he was able to take Parks and Rec through a very serious recession of 2008, 2009, and they continued to work and they continued to do things well. And they got a boost when the parks tax was passed, because all of a sudden they had a somewhat reliable, somewhat as you can get with sales tax, reliable funding stream. And it worked very, very well for him.
I'm gonna go quick. I'm going quick now. We're getting ready to get on like the fast track. How do you feel about the mayor? What kind of job
I have to
be doing?
Yeah, I judge by the most recent thing, and that is the COVID-19 crisis. Quinton has done a very, very good job, I think, of trying to stem the flow or the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases with a minimum of impact, as minimum as you can get it, to the economic status of the city. We had to have a shutdown for a while. I think that was probably necessary.
I think it should have lasted longer. Let's move on.
Okay.
How about? I said we on the quick track. How about this city manager situation? I had no idea before I started interviewing you council people that the gentleman that's there wasn't the city. He was a temporary. And I'm like, here we are a year into the process, and we still don't have no permanent city manager. And this is my understanding from my last interview, city council person last week. I think they said that the council really hadn't interviewed anyone, but there was an agency or a company that you hired to look at these. What's the deal with that, man?
Sure. We hired Baker Tilly, I think is the name of the company, to find candidates for us. They got something like 60 some applicants. Some were certainly not at all qualified. Some were very, very qualified. We narrowed that down to 4 candidates that we're going to be interviewing. We have left the door open that perhaps there'll be some others that could come online. The whole thing kind of got stalled, I think, with COVID-19 because all of a sudden people who may have been interested in this job were tied up in their own communities and their own projects to try to get through it. And so they focused on that rather than finding something new, which I think is very, very commendable of them.
Hey, you know what? See, this is the beauty of these conversations, because I was under the wrong impression. See, you mentioned that covert. So that's why we really, even with the 4 candidates, because these other people are tied up with situations that they're dealing with now. I would have never went that direction.
Well, yeah, and Baker Tilly talked to some of them. They said, look, come to us in a year, will you? But right now we got our own problems here that we need to deal with. And that's great from my perspective, because it shows that there are people running cities out there who are concerned with their cities more than themselves. And the candidates we got, I think, fit into that category.
But do you see this just over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, all this mayor recall crap? What, do you know anything about what that's about?
Well, only from what people have told me.
Right.
I guess there are petition drives up here in the Northland, but I haven't seen any of them personally. Somebody once said if a mayor isn't under a recall threat, that he's just not being a mayor.
His job.
Yeah, he's not doing a job. So I don't know. I don't put much stock in it. I think a lot of people are. One of the big things I hear that they're concerned about is the mask mandate. And I'm sorry that you don't want to wear a mask when you go in the store. You're required to wear pants when you go into a store, aren't you? Nobody complains about that. Well, what's the difference? Yeah, wear a mask, protect yourself, protect other people.
How do you see schools starting up? What's your opinion on that?
I think the school districts, and like I said, my daughter is a teacher. She now teaches in the North Kansas City School District.
And on the first line. I don't know what I would be teaching.
Very much so. And she's very cautious, very protective. My grandchildren are starting school online totally. They're 7 and 5. My daughter, they're going hybrid. And they're ready to adapt. If there's an outbreak where they have to go totally virtual, they can go totally virtual.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very cautious. I think the school districts, by and large, at least up here, and I think in Kansas City in general, are approaching it very realistically, and they're ready to adapt if they have to. So they're doing the best they can with what they've got.
What other project? You named the athletic fields. What other projects dear to your heart?
Well, there is a potential of a new data center coming in up here. Now, Quinton doesn't like data centers for some reason, but this thing, one building, as I'm told, one building costs $1 billion to build, and they're planning for 8 or 10 of them.
That's big revenue.
That's big revenue, and they're not big on-site job creators, but they're massive construction job creators, and they're massive tax generators. Yeah, they'll get some tax. That's what I was getting ready to ask
you on. I know they generate tax. What kind of, earlier about 6 months ago, 5 months ago, with that company moving from Kansas over here, and we gave them that $33 million or some crap. You know what I'm talking about? They got the tax write-off to come over here, back from Kansas. The company was over in Kansas City. Then they went over to Kansas for a better business opportunity. Now they're coming back.
Oh, well, Waddell Reed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that type stuff? Because now you're talking about the new development. It just seems like our taxpayers be getting fleeced to a degree. And like I said, I've been here since '78. All of these large projects that happen, the trickle-down effect is not trickling down like it should.
Well, I've never been a big fan of trickle down anyway. I don't think it ever works. But you have to keep in mind that we don't just compete locally. We compete nationally anymore.
Almost worldwide.
Worldwide, absolutely. You look at data centers. Well, they can just as easily go to Des Moines or Wichita or Lincoln, any place in the Midwest or anywhere else in the world as far
How
as
do your
that
other
goes.
councilman people feel about that?
Pardon me?
Have you discussed that with your other council people? How do they
Oh
feel
yeah,
about that?
yeah. We talk about it quite a bit. We're looking now at incentive reform and how that's going to work. But yeah, we have to keep that in mind. And if we want those businesses, we have to be able to compete with other jurisdictions that will give them some form of tax abatement. And we rarely anymore, in fact, I don't think we do anymore at all, give anybody 100% tax abatement. There's always a payback. And you have to say, okay, what is that? It's called a pilot, generally speaking, payment in lieu of taxes. For instance, the data center I'm talking about, if they only pay 25% of the taxes that they would ordinarily pay without an abatement, that'll be the single largest taxpayer in the Platte County R3 school district by a large measure. In fact, just that 25% will make it the second largest on one building, the second largest single owner taxpayer in the city. If they build two buildings, the largest single only county abatement. So you have to look at that number. That's a big number. And so it's an economic boon for the city. Plus you count in the construction jobs and they constantly regenerate themselves. As technology improves, they have to redo the hardware inside these buildings. And that's jobs that go on for a long, long time.
Do you think Kansas City has overbuilt downtown?
Overbuilt downtown? No, not really. I think certainly there is demand to go downtown. There still is demand to go downtown. Do I think we need to abate any more hotels or any more residences?
That was my
downtown?
next move.
No, I don't.
You beat me to my move, Dan.
Yeah, no. No, I think there's certain areas we need to abate and certain areas we don't. And I think there's strong enough demand in certain areas that we probably don't need to do much anymore in those areas, that they can finance themselves.
All right, this was the other thing that had slipped my mind. What do you think about working Kansas City? If to be employed by Kansas City, you need to be living in Kansas City.
You know, Kansas City is 318 square miles, 500,000 people. In Kansas City, there are all levels of housing. There's all levels of suburban versus urban. It's a diverse enough environment that I think we can continue with the residency requirement. I see no reason not to. It's not like a San Francisco where you have a very small area that's extremely expensive. People who work for San Francisco aren't going to get the wages that cost to live there. We're not that way.
Right.
We're
I love
all
Kansas
kinds
City.
of diversity as far as living conditions and so on. So there is basically something for everybody in Kansas City where other communities don't have that. So I don't have any problem with it.
Where are you at with the police situation? The state controlling versus the city?
I think eventually we will go to local control. I don't think now is the time to do it because there's just too much uncertainty.
There's too much mischief in the air and everything is a lot of static. You want it to quiet down?
I want it to quiet down so we can make a smooth, even, thoughtful transition, not something that's done in a panic. Also, our crime rate is high. I don't care what kind of governance structure you have. That's not going to solve the crime rate. There are other factors. And, the Board of Police Commissioners are local people. Now, none of them are from my district, and I don't like that. I would rather the governor appoint folks from every district in the city, because that way you get a more diverse opinion.
Like the council.
Down there. But by and large, the governance structure is not going to influence a lot of that.
Well, the violence, let's talk about that. As far as I'm concerned, they talk about black on black and this and that. We've been redlined real estate, health, economics. Do you know I had $1 million bonding capacity and I never had more than a $25,000 line of credit? I'm saying Kansas City was a very racist and a union town when I moved here in '78. And I had to feel free to be able to express what I seen in my, my situation. It has gotten much better. There's no doubt about that. But when they look at the black community and say, this is going on and this is going on and this is going on, if you put 500 rats in a box, a lot of things is going to happen if they have no way out that box.
Sure.
And that's how our community, no economics, there's no nothing in the black community. And that's across America to a degree. And most white people, they're more like, I had nothing to do with slavery. I had nothing to do with this or that, but they don't understand they're benefiting. And I think, as I said, we're having that conversation. I think the majority community has to really sit down and look at itself and really understand the history of this country. And America was supposed to be different from all these other countries on the planet with our democracy and how we do things, what we say versus what we do. And I think now with this Black Lives Matter movement, it's not so much Black lives or Floyd. I think the world sees that disproportionately the law, the economics, everything is against the poor people of the world, not just, here in Kansas City. And George Floyd and all of that is just the poster child for what's going on. It's a real inequity across globally. And in America, I think the only way it can be solved from a racial standpoint is having these conversations and hopefully respecting one another's positions.
Sure. I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, and the lack of economic diversity and the lack of the ability for people, I mean, I was blessed because of the era I was born in. Because, when I was a kid or even in college, I got paid minimum wage during the summers. That was pretty good money back then. Now it isn't. Now
yeah,
it's
sure.
terrible.
Back then, we could buy a Hershey bar for a nickel, bag of potato chips.
Yeah.
10 cents for a soda, bring the bottle back and get 2 cents.
Yep, absolutely. And, it's a different world now. And, I'm a local leader. I'm a local elected official.
Now, if you classify yourself as a leader, that's what you are. You feel that you're not sitting in the seats. You're standing up and you're trying to lead.
Yes. And my problem, though, is there's only so much a local elected official can do. There is a whole lot that national elected officials can do. And frankly, a lot of them aren't doing much. I don't think the environment we're in right now on a national level is at all conducive to closing the economic opportunity gaps that we see in our society. It's not just black and white, it's poor versus rich.
Well,
and the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And it's time to figure out a way on a national level to stop that flow.
But you can't do that in this atmosphere. Like you said with the police thing, you want things to calm down, then we can make some rational, clear decisions. With the right and the left going at each other like they are, and now, what do you think about all this paramilitary? I'm hoping that don't slide over here to Kansas City.
I hope it doesn't either. Fortunately, haven't seen it. I'm sure there was elements out there, but it's extra legal, and I believe in law. Uh, I've devoted over 40 years to practicing law and understanding law and the rule of law. The rule of law, rather than rule of personality, is extremely important, and that's what we were built on. But sometimes the rule of personality gets in the mix, and it shouldn't happen.
Well, see, my brother-in-law, Leon Harden, he was on the crime commission. I told you my godfather called the Capitals on the crime commission. And then my other brother-in-law, Ron Harden, he's retired from the police force. So I'm torn between that situation and how the authorities have treated Black people in general. And I think that has to be looked at. Hey, Dan, and some closing comments. What would you want your constituents and the African American community to understand about Dan Flowers?
First of all, I'm open to talk to just about anybody. As long as they're going to be respectful, I'm more than happy to talk to them and try to understand their issues and try to understand their concerns. One of the things that I think we've done better in my district and under my term is constituent services, trying to reach out to people or have people reach out to us and say, look, I've got this concern. What can you do about it? They're very localized things.
All politics are local.
All politics are local. A street getting resurfaced could be a big thing to a community. I got a complaint the other day about a traffic sign that was defaced. Those can be important things to people. And that's what we try to reach out to do, is to solve very isolated problems and try to help our neighborhoods to be better places to live. Those are what my biggest concerns are. First of all, is giving people healthy neighborhoods to live in and try to do neighborhood revitalization. Part of that, though, is to bring economic opportunity so that there's more work for everybody. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care what color you are. You come in with a good bid, you ought to get that bid. I don't care. I mean, that's it. You complain about the airport. Some of the local companies that have complained the loudest that didn't get work came in 30 or 40% higher on their bids than the company that got the work.
Well, see, they telling me
we've got the airlines looking over our shoulders. They're paying the bill. We're not, and they're very cognizant of that. Get closer, sharpen your pencil, get down. You'll get the work.
Are there any more closing words that you would have to say to your constituents? And give a word to my people. Give a word to the Black people in Kansas City on how you feel per se about equal opportunity. In closing, Dan.
Move to the Northland. Move to the Northland. I'll tell you.
My guy, Jason Parson, he hurried up and got over there.
Oh, absolutely. And Jason's one of my very best, closest, dearest friends.
All right.
And my closest confidant in a lot of ways.
Jason's my guy too. Me and him have our difficulties, but fundamentally, Jason's a good person.
He is.
He tries to do what's best, but it's so hard when everything is so tight.
It is. It's very difficult. But Jason is extremely hard worker. He's built a business on doing a good job and integrity. And he is upfront. He's open. He'll take what he tells you. You can take to the bank because it's the straight truth.
There's no doubt about that. I don't like what he tells me a lot of times, but you definitely can take it to the bank.
Absolutely. And when he tells you something, you listen. You're well advised to listen. He
young
me off of a
man
number
helped me
of
get
clips.
myself together. Hey, Dan, I have 1 million projects, and Jason gave me some advice. I was trying to get him to do something. He was like, man, you just got to drill in this one area, and you got to stay focused, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And I took that to the bank, and it made me a little bit of cake.
Good. Maybe with a little frosting on it.
Yeah, right. And I'm saying, got to be willing to listen. That's what the conversation is. Because these complicated problems that we have in society, especially in Kansas City, cannot be solved in a soundbite.
No, they cannot. And we didn't get into these problems overnight, and we're not going to get out of them overnight. We just have to persevere and see what is the right thing to do and follow the right thing to do. And just let that work.
In closing, as I always say, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.